Welcome back. We'll continue with our sessions now. And before we start in with our keynote session, we'll introduce a couple of our sponsors again. So, one of our bronze sponsors is Silent Partner, and we have Brad with us. Brad?
Hi, Rick.
Hey, Brad. Why don't you just tell everyone a little bit about Silent Partner?
Well, Silent Partner Software, we're very passionate about helping nonprofits with their technology. Specifically, we have a suite of software solutions that can help them from fundraising to operations management, which includes segmenting donors to websites to case management. With our 1,900 customers, our aim is to help each one of them to do more better.
That's great. Just tell us a little bit about the story of your company, like what size it is now, how it started, and this is an entrepreneurial conference, so just give us a little glimmer into that.
This company actually sort of started in its modern age as an acquisition about 9 years ago. And so Silent Partner ended up buying a smaller software that was already in existence called the Silent Partner, serving the faith community primarily out in Langley, BC. From there, we've grown it to over 40 employees and from 100 customers to over 1,900 customers in that time. So we've been pretty successful and very blessed to serve our nonprofit space.
Well, yeah, that sounds great. So it's an entrepreneurial story in and of itself, and you're doing great work serving a lot of charities and nonprofits. And I assume your clients are throughout North America and beyond.
Mostly North America, but we do have companies around the world, including Malaysia, Indonesia, South Africa. So it's quite a challenge to keep them all satisfied, but I think we do a pretty good job.
Great. Well, thanks again for being a bronze sponsor of this event.
Thanks for having us, Rick.
Great. Now, another one of our sponsors is Cook Aquaculture, and we have Joel Richardson with us.
Hi, Rick. How you doing?
Great. Hey, Joel. So
Hi.
we're covering most of the world. Europe, throughout the U.S., East Coast, West Coast Canada. So you're on the East Coast. So tell us a little bit about Cook Aquaculture.
Sure. Well, Cook Aquaculture is a family-owned company. We're based in Blacks Harbor, New Brunswick, but we actually have salmon farming and seafood operations, both aquaculture, fish farming operations, shrimp farming operations, and we also have wild capture fisheries all around the world in 10 different countries.
And give us a sense as to the size, because it's a rather large company.
It is. It was started by Glenn Cook and his family in 1985. So the company's been around for 36 years now. And we're approximately 10,000 employees. And a number of our employees are in the United States as well as throughout 9 other countries. And we would sell to well over 60 countries around the world. We sell about 1 billion pounds of fresh and frozen seafood to hotels, restaurants, grocery stores, and other customers all around the world.
So the bottom line is that's a lot of fish and chips.
It's a lot of fish and chips, absolutely.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Joel. We really appreciate the support of Cook Aquaculture.
You're very welcome, and have a great conference.
Thanks. Great. Well, now we'll move on to our next session, which is in fact our keynote session. And if I can get Sam on the line here. So Sam Chan. Hey, Sam, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Thumbs up. Perfect. So Sam Chan is based out of Atlanta, Georgia. He's a globally known leadership expert, works with many large church pastors, other leaders. I mean, he's got a very long and distinguished bio and track record, all of which is in our guide, so you can look at it there. I also want to point out before Sam begins his presentation that all of you know we have a leadership kit bonus. That's a set of digital material that's available to all registrants. And after the forum is over in the coming days, we'll send out a notice how you can access that material. But Sam's material is great, and it'd be a real advantage to all of you to access that. So today, Sam will be speaking on SQUIRREL. Now, not the animal, but the concept. So 8 questions that shape an entrepreneurial mindset. And Sam will speak, I think it was for 35, 40 minutes, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. But now I'll hand it over to Sam. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick, so very, very much for this amazing opportunity to serve you and great vision of ELO National Forum. So today I want to kind of paint a picture of what it really means for an entrepreneurial mindset. We talk about a mindset. So a mindset is not what you do. A mindset is how you think about something. A mindset is what you value. I have been doing what I do, consulting with leaders all over the world for the last 35 plus years. And I can tell you there's a direct correlation between the mindset, which means what an organization values, and its entrepreneurial innovative outcomes. So I want to talk to you about 8 things today, and to make it sticky so that it will be easier to remember, I use the word for the animal squirrel, SQUIRREL. And as you can imagine, each one of those alphabets is going to mean a different word. So let's jump right in. S stands for scarcity. How your organization values scarcity. Oh, I know. Everybody is about abundance. Everybody wants more of this and more of that. Nobody's trying to grow small. Everybody's trying to look for more. But how an organization values scarcity is a mindset an entrepreneur has to have. I've been an entrepreneur. You are an entrepreneur. You have been an entrepreneur. Wherever you are on this continuum in your transition, you know you didn't start with more than enough. You didn't even start with enough. You didn't start with abundance. You started with what you had. You didn't have a warehouse, you didn't have a factory, you didn't have trucks, you didn't have a logo, you didn't have a website, you didn't have a phone number, you didn't have business cards, you didn't have a product, you just had an idea. But what you started off was with scarcity. So how you value scarcity makes all the difference. So if your team is dealing with an item that is scarce, and their answer is, let's go buy this, let's just go get this, then that is not valuing scarcity. Scarcity says we have this vision, this is what we want to accomplish, this is what we want to get done, but we don't have the resources necessary to accomplish that. How do we do that? It is a mindset that entrepreneurs have to embrace. How do I value scarcity? One of the things that I needed to say in my introduction that I need to say now is all these 8 points are big points of their own. I could spend an hour on each one of those. I'm not going to. But what I would like for you to do is to take each one of these items, take them back to your teams, take them back to your companies, take them back to your organizations, and maybe you can have an 8-month discussion on it, 1 point at a time. How you value scarcity. So scarcity is one of those items that everybody wants to run from. We want to, if the scarcity, we want to hire it, we want to build it, we want to just do something that will get rid of the scarcity. But how you value the scarcity in your time. I remember so many times in my life where a duct tape and a coat hanger kept the exhaust pipe together. Scarcity. There are many, many times the scarcity has brought us the greatest innovation, because the greatest, listen to me carefully here, the greatest prerequisite for an entrepreneur to succeed is scarcity, because scarcity will help you think in ways you haven't thought before. That's what S stands for. Q stands for questions. How does your organization not only accept questions, but how does your organization actually encourage people to ask questions? Because see, questions are the way in which we can explore further. Now, one of the challenges is our generational gap. Generational gap means I'm almost 70 years of age in my life. And the way I was raised in my family was, if we asked our parents why, the question why was always an affront to authority. It was being disrespectful. It was being dishonorable. And the question why, or any kind of question, was not really acceptable. I mean, even in recent times, I've heard parents say, because I said so, because questions were not accepted. However, when somebody in a next generation is asking a question, they're asking a question because they want an answer, not an attitude. A question, just to ask a question, is totally permissible and encouraged. So how do you encourage people in your organization to ask questions that are exploring, questions that are saying, now why do we do this? In fact, I found out, I was a university president for 15 years in Atlanta, and I can tell you, I discovered that the best 3 months of any employee are the first 3 months, because they become your consultants, in-house consultants. They'll ask questions such as, why do we do this? Why do I need 3 signatures on it? Why do we have to wait for this to happen? Why is it not being given to somebody else to handle? Why is that being still handled by that department? It's be much more seamless if it was handled by that department. How you encourage and value questions. It's a mindset. You are an entrepreneur because you had a questioning attitude about yourself. You questioned, why not? Why not here? Why not there? Why can't we do this? Wonder what we like if. Questions. So S stands for scarcity. Q stands for questions. U stands for being unafraid. Unafraid. I wrote a book on organizational culture simply called Culture Catalyst, in which I talk about the whole notion of an unafraid culture. An unafraid culture will allow innovation to flourish. An unafraid culture will allow entrepreneurial mindset, because entrepreneurs are not afraid. They are unafraid, but most of all, they're unafraid of failure. Unafraid of failure. Because see, failure is simply an event. It's never a person. You fail at things, but you're not a failure. And understanding that the prerequisite for anything going forward is serial failure. My definition of innovation, of an entrepreneur, is serial failure. So how do you create an organization that values lack of fear, unafraid of failure? Because when you're unafraid of failure, there is lessons to be learned and no one is to be blamed. Because in a fearful culture, people are not innovative, they back off, they are tentative. In a fearful culture, people don't trust each other. In a fearful culture, people are afraid of being punished, because there's a punitive culture that exists over there. But in an entrepreneurial mindset, we say to ourselves, no, we are unafraid of failure. So S stands for scarcity, how you value scarcity. Q stands for how you value questions. U stands for how you value being unafraid. So SQUI. I stands for incremental increase. This is my favorite. Incremental increase. Favorite point. Incremental increase. So everybody's looking for that big breakthrough. Everybody's looking for that bigger, faster. Everybody's looking to get somewhere in a hurry. Everybody's looking for somebody to pick them up. So everybody's looking for that success, that overnight success, how you go from rags to riches overnight. But incremental increase has been my life experience. Most of you and most of the entrepreneurs I've worked with in my life have valued incremental increase. Incremental increase says little by little, little by little. It's interesting how people don't understand the difference in planning and preparation. So someone says to me, so how long did it take you to plan what you're teaching us about SQUIRREL today? Probably 3-4 hours to plan. But then you ask me, how long did it take you to prepare? About 55 years to prepare what I'm sharing with you right now. Why am I saying that to you? Because if you're looking for that immediate gratification, immediate success, you're going to get disappointed. You're going to get discouraged. You're going to give up. Don't do that. because the I in squirrel stands for incremental increase. Just say to yourself, little by little, little by little. In the book of Exodus in the Bible, God comes to Moses and says to him, chapter 29, says to Moses, hey, listen, I would love to give you, actually it's chapter 23, I'm sorry. I would love to give you the land, all of it overnight, but you won't handle it. You can't absorb it. You don't have the capacity to handle that. But I will give it to you little by little. That's an encouraging thing for you to take away from today, that you are not where you were yesterday. You are not where you want to be tomorrow. But here today, you are increasing incrementally, little by little. So S stands for scarcity. Q stands for questions. U stands for being unafraid of failure. I stands for incremental increase. And then we go to RREL. The first R stands for taking risks. Taking risks. How you value taking risks. This is what I know. When you're 100% sure, you're too late. Let me say that again. When you're 100% sure, you're too late. Because everybody's looking for the sure decision. And if you keep putting off your decision making for tomorrow, tomorrow will be new elements attached to that, new information attached to that, and you will not be able to make a decision because you'll be the flip-flam the whole time. But taking risks, I don't understand something about organizations. As organizations grow, they become risk averse. So as organizations grow, it takes them longer and longer to make a decision because they are less and less prone to take risks. I want to say to you, go play in the traffic. Yeah, go play in the traffic. Take risks. You come here this far by taking risks. Why do you want to play it safe? Why do you want to die a coulda, woulda, shoulda life when you can take risks and make what you are supposed to make of yourself, a successful entrepreneur? So S stands for scarcity. Q stands for questions, how you value questions, how you value scarcity. U stands for how you value being unafraid of failure. I stands for how you value incremental increase. The next R stands for how you take risks. The next R is relationships, how you value relationships. Now, this is probably the most important part of Squirrel because everything rises and falls on relationships. I was introduced to Rick through a relationship. I am on this line because of relationship. Everything in life will get you where you are in life because of relationships. Look back on your own journey. Look back on your own where you've been and where you're going. It's all because of relationships. So what do relationships do? Relationships create trust. And trust is the glue that keeps everything together. A great book that I would like to recommend to you, I wish I had written that book, it was Stephen Covey Jr. called The Speed of Trust. The Speed of Trust. But I want to give you my definition of trust. My Sam Chan's definition of trust is trust is a feeling. Trust is a feeling. Trust is a feeling based on repeated reality. Trust is a feeling based on repeated reality. Repeated reality. For example, if you're always on time, I trust you. If you always return my phone call, I trust you. If you don't return my phone calls, that is the opposite of trust. But it's a feeling. It's a feeling. Well, have you ever been trying to call somebody and you're about to leave them a message and then you roll your own eyes and say, I don't know why I should leave them a message. They're never going to listen to the message. They're never call me back. It's a feeling. And it's not just in your head, but in your gut, there's a feeling that's going on. So trust is based on relationships. So as an entrepreneur, you know you won't be able to do it yourself. One of my first books, I've written 23 books now on leadership. One of my first books was called Who's Holding Your Ladder? Who's Holding a Ladder? In which I simply say that you can have the greatest vision, which is your ladder. You can be the greatest visionary, the ladder climber, but your ascent of the ladder, the fulfillment of your entrepreneurial dream, the success of your aspirations is not dependent on your vision, your ladder. It's not dependent even on you, the ladder climber. It is dependent on who's holding your ladder. And that is the relationship. Our parents held our ladders. Our teachers held our ladders. Our pastors held our ladders. People we do business with held our ladders. A little while ago, we heard from two people who are sponsoring this great conference, ELO conference. One was in software, the other is in fishery. But boy, are they not holding a ladder? Without software, I wouldn't be coming to you right now. It's a different kind of software, but the software makes the world go round. Without the fisheries doing what they do, without the Cook enterprise doing what they do, we wouldn't be doing what we are doing. So all that to say that it is about relationships. And I am amazed how entrepreneurs get so engrossed in what they are doing and they miss out on the people factor, because anywhere you're going to go in life is going to be people who are going to take you further in life. So S stands for scarcity, Q stands for questions, U stands for how you value being unafraid of failure, R stands for incremental increase, how you value that. And I'm not looking for that major breakthrough, but plodding it out one step at a time. Then R stood for how you value taking risks. The other R I just finished talking to you about was about how you value relationship. I have two more alphabets to go. E stands for how you value eruptions. Yes, that's right, like a volcano eruptions. Now, some people call it a disruption. Can I tell you the difference between disruption and eruption? Disruption is when you are talking about somebody else that's happening in their life. Eruption is when it's happening to you. Yeah, for somebody else, it's a disruptive moment. For you, it's an eruption that's taking place. How you value eruptions. Now, please hear me out on this. Some of my greatest opportunities, some of my greatest benefits, some of my greatest pivotal moments in life have come in eruption moments. Eruption moments when somebody resigned and left midway. Eruption moments are when somebody is not being totally cooperative with you. Eruption moments is when you had to fire somebody. Every entrepreneur fires somebody. And can I take an aside right now and say to you, every entrepreneur, the first hire they have is a friend. And the first fire you're going to have eventually will be a friend. I have a whole talk on that, on how to fire a friend, because every entrepreneur will end up firing their friend. You see any movie about any entrepreneur, be it Steve Jobs or Zuckerberg or anybody, you'll see the same thing in their lives. But let me come back to what we're talking about. Eruption. If you're going through an eruptive moment right now, don't run away from it. Because in an eruptive moment, the question to ask yourself is not, what should we do about this? The question to ask yourself is, how should I think about this? For example, if one of your star people leaves your company, the question will be, do I immediately hire somebody? Do I just hire for gaps? Now there's a gap. Or do I have to fill a vacancy? Maybe the question is not what should I do about it. The question is, how should I think about that? That simply means, do I need this position anymore? Can I consolidate some work? Can I rearrange this? Can I redo my system? Can I redo my packaging of what I do? How should I think about this rather than an autopilot? Somebody leaves, you fill the gap for them. Eruption. If you're going through an eruptive moment right now, you know, new islands are formed when volcanoes erupt. A few, maybe 2 years ago, our state of Hawaii was having major volcano eruptions. And I saw a documentary how those volcanic things kept coming down, 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 and finally hit the ocean. And new islands of different sizes and categories were being formed. You have the opportunity for major development simply because you are having eruptive moments. Don't run from them. How you value eruption in your organization. And finally, we land on the letter L. Letter L. L stands for leadership. Now, anybody who knows me, Sam Chan, knows I have only one string on my guitar. I have only one thing that I talk about, write about. All 23 of my books, all my leadership programs are built around only one thing, leadership. So I could be here forever talking about that. But I want to give you the job description of an entrepreneurial leader. You ready? The job description for an entrepreneurial leader. It is the letter D, 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 3D. Yeah, let me give them to you. Discover, develop, deploy. Discover, develop, deploy. Discover, develop, deploy. As an entrepreneurial leader, your mindset should be, who do I discover? Who do I develop? And who do I deploy? Discover, develop, deploy. Every one of us who is watching us right now, all over the world, people are watching ELO National Forum. Actually, it's an international forum. Were at one time in their life discovered by somebody. Somebody, no, let me correct that. Somebodies over the years have discovered me. How did I come to you right now? Because Rick, somewhere in his journey, made a discovery of Sam Chand down in Atlanta, USA. So who are you discovering? Yeah, everybody is waiting to be discovered, but you can be the discoverer. And then develop. Now, development is different from training. Training is about a task. Development is about a person. So training is when you train somebody to do something. It's a function. But when you develop somebody, you develop them to be better human beings, how to resolve conflict, how to keep focus, how to make decisions, how to run a meeting. So you develop a person in their mentality and how they think, a mindset. You discover them, you develop them, and then you got to find solid, honorable, respectful places to deploy them. There's nothing worse in an organization for somebody to discover you, develop you, and then leave you where you're at. So somebody has to discover you, develop you, and deploy you. So Rick, I'm going to conclude now in another 60 seconds by wrapping up the SQUIRREL, and then we can do some Q&A. If there's any questions out there, I'd be happy to do the answer part. And then I do want to conclude with a paragraph about how to think about all of this. So here we go. Rick, I'm about to throw the ball to you. S stands for how you value scarcity. Q stands for how you value questions. We're talking about 8 questions about an entrepreneurial mindset. SQ, U stands for how you are unafraid of failure, how you value that. I stands for how you value incremental, little by little increase. R stands for how you value risks. The other R stands for how you value relationships, because all trust is built on relationships, and you're going to get ahead in life because of relationships. E stands for how you value eruptive moments. And then L stands for how you value leadership when you discover, develop, and deploy.
Great. Well, that's excellent, Sam, and really appreciate your remarks. Just so everyone listening knows, we have approximately 10 minutes for Q&A. I've got a number of questions, and as you have questions, just put them in the Q&A section, and we'll get to them as we can. The first question I'd like to start off with is, what are some distinctly Christian aspects of leadership? So if someone said, what you've described, well, that's great, but that sounds a bit like a mainstream leadership teaching, let's say. But from your standpoint, and I know, of course, given your background as a pastoring and running a Bible college, what would you say are the core aspects of a Christian-based leadership approach?
Well, we know that all truth is God's truth. So that's where we start. We also understand that uh, all all leadership principles come out of the scriptures. So, for example, if I could just take an example of how we think about scarcity. So, in the scriptures, when there was scarcity of courage, David showed up. When there was scarcity of food, Jesus fed the multitudes. When there's scarcity uh, of a leader, Moses shows up. So we have to understand that everything that we can say is Christian. However, as a Christian leader, because I'm a Christian first and everything else second, as a Christian leader, I have to know that wherever I go, I'm a witness to the Lord Jesus Christ. I have to live my life like that. I'm supposed to be what Jesus said, the salt and light. Salt, what does salt do? Influence. What does light do? It changes the atmosphere. It influences where we are at, the environment that we are in. So as a Christian leader, I have to say to myself, will this be a good testimony to the name of our Lord Jesus Christ? And that is the major one differentiating factor. And after that, it becomes an application of pragmatic leadership. Thank you. That's a great question.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one thing that people may not know, but you've shared with me previously, is that you do a lot of work with mega church or large church pastors throughout the world. Uh, because so many people listening, they're of course parts of churches, leading in churches, and we have pastors who are listening. What's something you could say in terms of, what are challenges that large church pastors face, and how could people in the business community support them or walk with them?
So in a church situation, numbers change, but issues remain the same. That simply means if you are 100% church or you are 10,000% church, some of the churches I work with are hundreds of thousands of people. Your issues will remain the same, your numbers will change, and hence your response to the numbers change. For example, doesn't matter if you're 100% church or tens of thousands of them, you're still dealing with facilities, you're dealing with personnel, you're dealing with staffing, you're dealing with volunteers, you're dealing with finances, you're dealing with insurance, you're dealing with legal, you're dealing with programming, you're dealing with people coming, people leaving, you're dealing with volunteers. I mean, you're dealing with all of those. So everybody deals with the same. And a lot of times people think once I get there, I will not have to deal with that. However, the influence of a larger church is where it is important to realize that our business community, Christian business community, is what has to be our main focus, because that has been God's purpose. So just to give you a little brief on that, all the 12 disciples of Jesus were business people. Jesus chose business people to continue his work. And even not the disciples, Lydia, Paul, all of these people who Saul, the rabbi who became Apostle Paul, all these people are business people. Why am I saying that? Because God has always used the business community who buy into the vision of the kingdom to come alongside the church and to support the vision and the mission of the church with the finances, with the know-how, what they said, time, talent, treasure. So a lot of times it is so important for the pastor to know that he's not just coming to you for money, he's coming to you for wisdom, coming for your knowledge, for understanding, for resources that you have. So a little while ago, for example, one of our sponsors talked about software. Wouldn't it be wonderful, whichever church he is a part of, that church and that organization could tap into those resources, and resources at a level that are commensurate to their need. So every church and every pastor needs to know that the people in the church that are working in the marketplace are marketplace leaders because that is how God has ordained. In fact, if you look in the scriptures, the first person, his name was Bezalel. Bezalel was the first person from about whom God said, "My spirit rests upon him." Bezalel was not a priest. Bezalel was not a rabbi. Bezalel was not a prophet. Bezalel was not a Levite. Bezalel was a marketplace leader known for his architectural and building prowess. He could build anything. So when God was giving Moses the blueprint and wanted to actually build a house for himself, the first person in the Bible, Rick, that it says, "And my spirit is upon him," is about Bezalel. So to say all that, the business community, the believing business community has an amazing opportunity to come alongside their pastor and say, "How can I serve you? You have a great vision. How can I bring my resources to bear on that vision?" I think that's a great opportunity.
Great. There's a question here. Is squirrel a linear concept? Now, what I take the question to mean is it a sequence? So maybe a way to rephrase the question is, if you look at the 8 things you've identified as squirrel, what are the starting points? What would be the first building blocks to sort of move down that path to improving your leadership capacity?
So if I'm hearing the question right, is if you could take the 8 questions and meet with your teams, which one point would you start with? Where
Right.
would you? Okay, I think I would start with relationships, because everything is about relationships. Sales is about relationships. Warehousing is about relationships. Logistical pipelines about relationships. Everything is about relationships. And when people say the interconnectedness and not focus on the product, because the real product is the person. The messenger is the message. So I would encourage everyone, the number one would be relationships, and how an organization values relationship, because everything in life, relationships are the glue that keeps everything together. So the first negative comment that God made in the Bible was in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, when he created Adam, and he looked at Adam. Till then, he said he made light, he made salmon for the fisheries, he made all kinds of different things. It is good, it is good, it is good, it is good. And when it comes to day 6, he makes man out of the dust of the earth. And the first negative comment that comes out of God's mouth is, "It is not good that man should be alone." That means we were built for relationship. That is why the harshest punishment apart from death penalty is solitary confinement. You take somebody out of relationship, however distant that might be, but you take somebody out of relationship and put them into solitary, they become subhuman. And therefore, out of the 8 things that I said, the number one thing I would start with any organization is, how do we value relationships?
Right. Now, I have a question. Given that we've been in a COVID environment for approximately 20 months or so, what lessons would you say we should learn, or leaders can learn from being in that environment, and examples of how some organizations or people or churches have adapted and even thrived in that environment?
So in a moment, I'm going to give you 5 questions to ask yourself. But before I say that, I think we have to lose 2 pieces of our vocabulary. People keep talking about pre-COVID, we did this, in 2019, we did this. Forget that. That's gone. That's never to come back. So if your measurements stick, if your metrics haven't shifted and your metrics are still the same, your yardstick hasn't shifted. Instead of a yardstick, now he's giving us a meter, if that makes sense. Instead of miles, he's giving us kilometers. And we cannot keep saying how it used to be and compare today to that. That is gone away. That's irrelevant. So get that out of your vocabulary. The second thing that get out of your vocabulary is, there's no such thing as a new normal. No such thing because a new normal implies that it was whatever happened. Now we have taken it and there are tweaks to it. The word I would like for us to think about is the new realities, not a new normal, but new realities. We have new realities that we have to deal with. So having said that, let's lose those two pieces of vocabulary. 5 quick questions. Number 1, what should we start? Number 2, what should we stop? Number 3, what should we suspend? Number 4, what should we sustain? Number 5, what should we speed? Let me say 10 seconds behind each one of them. What should we start? There's an amazing opportunity for you to start everything you wanted to start. Start it now. You have an amazing opportunity. What should we stop? I think COVID has taught us, Rick, what was dead, what was on life support, wasn't doing well anyhow. So pull the plug, let it go. What should we start? What should we stop? Number 3, what should we suspend? What are decisions that we need to make, but we'll make them 6 months from now? We'll make them 3 months from now. And when you suspend a decision, you clear up margin in your mind to focus on other things and don't let them clutter. So you don't have to talk about the same thing week after week after week. You can suspend that decision for down the road. Number 4 is what should we sustain? I think every organization at this point has to ask yourself, what are we going to continue doing? And finally, what should we speed? Every organization is discovering that 2 or 3 things that are bringing you the greatest returns, are bringing you the greatest fulfillment, are bringing you the greatest growth. Find momentum into that and get behind it. So what should we start, stop, suspend, sustain, and speed?
Great. I've got one more question here. Will strategizing for incremental growth allow an entrepreneur to manage risk-taking and therefore be unafraid?
Oh, there I've got 3 questions in one question. That's what that's what entrepreneurs do, right? They try to bundle it all up. I would say to you, you don't have to be afraid of failure. I would say to you that you're going to continue taking risks. But incremental increase is on the other side of the equation. It's on the other side of the equal mark. Incremental increase is what you see on the other side. And if your expectation is, if I take this risk and if I'm unafraid, if I do all these things, therefore I'm going to see this big, hairy, audacious thing come around here, I would like to say, be happy with the incremental increase you're getting, because nobody's an overnight success. I mean, look at your life. You've shared some of your life with me. I mean, right now you got a bookcase behind you with books. There was a time in your life you didn't have all that. I mean, you have led people in leadership at Oxford. Who does that? Rick does that. But that didn't happen overnight. And the hundreds of people who are watching us right now, they didn't come into your ecosystem overnight. It's been incremental increase. 1 here, 2 there, 5 there, 10 there, 1 here, 20 there. And here we are with thousands of people who are engaged with you right now. And I think that is what I'm talking about. We have to value the outcome and not get discouraged by it.
That's great. Well, we're down to the last couple of minutes, and you mentioned that you had a parable to leave us with. So
no, I don't know if it's a parable, but about 30 some years ago, Rick, about 30 some years ago, I read a saying by Alvin Toffler. Alvin Toffler, a great futurist, philosopher, said this. And it's so good, I'm going to say it 2 times. He said this: the illiterate of the future will not be those who can't read or write. The illiterate of the future will be those who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. Learn, unlearn, and relearn. Let me say that again. The illiterate of the future will not be those who can't read or write. The illiterate of the future will be those who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. In my life, in every entrepreneur's life, I think the greatest challenge is unlearning. We are good learners, we are good relearners, we are very poor unlearners. And I want to leave an entire audience with one simple question: what is it that you've always done that you need to unlearn?
Well, that's a great note on which to end. And I want to highlight to everyone that, as I mentioned earlier, we have a bonus for all people who have attended the forum and registered for the forum. We'll be sending an email out in a couple of days after the event, which will give information on how to take advantage of the e-versions of various Sam Chan leadership books. So Sam, thank you very much for that, making that bonus available. Also, thank you very much for your great presentation and all the good work you're doing.
Thank you, Rick. It's an honor to be with you and with the entire tribe of ELO.